Okay, imagine this for a second. You've just got yourself a brand new garden hose.
Oh, yeah, the nice shiny one.
Exactly. Feels solid. You're thinking, perfect lawn, clean car. Finally,
Simple stuff.
you hook it up, turn on the tap, and,
Yeah.
well, instead of that nice, steady stream, you get a sort of pathetic trickle
Mm-hmm.
and this immediate gush of water, but it's coming from right where you connected it, not the nozzle end.
Right at the spigot connection. Yeah, that's super frustrating.
It really is, isn't it? You just wanted the thing to work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that really annoying leak, that's pretty much where we're kicking off this deep dive.
Okay.
Today we're digging into what we're calling the curious case of hose connectors. And we're using some really interesting notes we found, notes on home improvement.
Right.
It seems whoever wrote these notes ran into this exact same problem, baffling leak with a new hose, even though they'd used what they thought was the same connector for ages.
Yeah, years, apparently, with no issues.
So our mission here is to figure out, well, why did this new hose suddenly start leaking? And then how did it actually end up bursting? There's this hidden complexity, it seems, in something as basic as a hose connection. What was that one critical thing they missed? That's what we want to uncover.
And what's really interesting in those notes is, like you said, the author's complete surprise.
Yeah.
I mean, they describe using this specific connector setup for years. Never a problem. It worked.
So reliable.
Totally predictable. And it was only when they swapped in this new hose, maybe slightly different material, whatever, that suddenly, poof.
The whole thing goes wrong.
Yeah, the seal just gave way, water everywhere, which tells you straight away, okay, it probably wasn't just the old connector failing on its own.
Right. It was a combination.
Something about that new interaction.
That's the bit that makes you, scratch your head, right? That classic, but it always worked before feeling.
Yeah.
So, okay, the author's got this burst hose after years of things being fine. What was the first clue? What did they look at when they realized the connection was the weak spot?
Well, naturally, the first thought was, okay, maybe the old connector just finally wore out. Age,
Makes sense.
Or maybe the new hose itself was dodgy, defective somehow.
Right. Blame the new guy.
Exactly. But as they dug into it, really traced it back, it wasn't wear and tear. And it wasn't just the new material either. It was something, more fundamental. It was about the dimensions.
Dimensions.
Yeah. Size. Turns out this new hose actually needed a different size connector than the one they'd been using all along.
Wait, size? Like literally bigger or smaller?
Yeah.
That's what caused a burst after all that time.
That's the surprising part. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. You just assume they're all, standard.
Most people do. But they discovered there are typically two common sizes, at least for, regular home gardening setups. There's a 16-millimeter connector, and then there's a larger 20-millimeter one. And here's the real kicker from the notes. Their new hose. It was a 20-millimeter hose. But for years, without realizing it, they'd been forcing it onto a 16-millimeter fitting.
Hold on. So let me get this straight. For years, they were basically squeezing this bigger 20-mil hose onto a smaller 16-mil connector.
That's what the notes suggest, yeah.
And it just worked. Or seemed to.
It seemed to, which is why they never suspected anything, right? But it was basically under constant low-level stress.
Okay, like a ticking time bomb almost.
Sort of. And then the new hose comes along. Maybe the material was a bit stiffer, less forgiving, whatever the difference was.
Right.
It just exposed that underlying mismatch. But why did it finally burst? Not just leak, but actually fail catastrophically.
Yeah, what's happening, like, mechanically right there at the joint?
That's the really crucial bit. Imagine trying to put a lid that's just slightly too big onto a pot.
Okay.
You can kind of force it down, maybe wedge it on, and it might look closed.
Yeah, but it's not really sealed properly.
Exactly. And there's this constant outward push, right? That's basically what was happening. The slightly larger 20-mil hose was always fighting against that smaller 16-mil connector.
Okay.
So that creates this constant, maybe tiny, but persistent strain right on the sealing surface. It could never get that perfect watertight grip.
So there's always a tiny weakness.
A potential weakness, yeah. Over time, that stress likely caused a very small, maybe invisible gap to form right at the joint. You wouldn't even notice it.
Like a hairline crack waiting to happen.
Pretty much a silent problem. Then introduce the new hose. Maybe it transmits pressure differently, or it's just less flexible and it pushes that already stressed connection over the edge.
And that's when it bursts.
That's when it fails dramatically, right where the connection's supposed to be strongest. It wasn't just a persistent leak. The underlying stress caused a total failure.
Wow. That really drives home how These seemingly tiny details, things we completely overlook, can stack up.
Absolutely.
Good enough just wasn't in this case. Precision really mattered.
It really did. And I think the aha moment from digging into these notes is just that simple fact. Not all hose connectors are created equal.
Even if they look almost identical.
Right. You've got the
Oh.
common 16 millimeter and you've got the larger 20 millimeter. And trying to force that bigger 20 millimeter hose onto the 16 millimeter fitting, well, even if it seems to hold for a while.
It's asking for trouble.
It really is. You're building in that unnecessary pressure, creating that potential gap at the seal, and eventually you risk a failure, like a burst hose right there.
Whereas the proper 20 millimeter connector for the 20 millimeter hose just works.
It gives you that proper, tight, robust seal it was designed for. It's a perfect, if small, example of why using the right tool or the right part for the job is so important.
It really is. And this whole thing, this small detail about hose connectors,
Mm.
it teaches a bigger lesson, doesn't it? About precision, about fit.
Mm-hmm.
It really makes you wonder, where else in our lives, maybe way outside of home improvement, are we just assuming one size fits all?
Yeah, interesting point.
Are there other places where we're overlooking critical dimensions or specific requirements just because things seem to fit or seem to work okay for now?
Setting ourselves up for future leaks or breakdowns, maybe.
Exactly. What other common assumptions might be worth, taking a closer look at? It's definitely something to think about.